Mike Palmer here. It's a bustling early morning here in San Diego. I'm here with Juliana Finegan from Vivi, and we're going to talk about some of the work that she's doing. We're out here because of the ASU GSV conference, and this little bit of live and in person as opposed to Zoom, which is delightful. And then we always start by getting to know you a little bit. So can you quickly catch folks up on who you are and how you got to this point in your career?
Okay. My name is Juliana Finegan. So I was actually a high school chemistry and 8th grade science teacher for 10 years. 8 of those years were in San Diego,
Okay.
a Title I charter school. Taught high school chemistry and 8th grade science. Moved up to Seattle and started working for Relay Graduate School of Education, design all their online content around chemistry. And that was in the moment of time of blended learning.
Yeah.
So we actually got a grant from the Learning Accelerator to build teacher prep around this new thing. So I got to fly to like 70 schools across the country to identify common honors practice and build teacher prep around what is blended learning and how do we enable teachers to be successful.
Got it.
Moved over to the Learning Accelerator afterward.
And when you were talking about blended learning, like what time frame was that?
2011, 2012.
Got it. Okay.
So really like when it was like the Khan Academy, you know.
2012 was famously the year of the moon.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And so we had actually put they were free by Relay. I believe they still are on Canvas. And they were 4 different modules to be like, so what are the basics? You know, the station rotation time, the lab model, the flex model, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And also building sticky names around, think of like Teach Like a Champion, you know,
Right.
They had a lot of sticky names of how to do things.
And this is pre-COVID.
Oh, this is pre-COVID.
Way pre-COVID.
Way pre-COVID. I always say it was also BC, before children. So I was able to travel
I remember those days.
70 schools across the country. And what was really cool was I would walk around to every single classroom and be like, okay, so what is the common denominator? What is enabling teachers? What are the structures and support that are enabling teachers to be successful in this space?
Yeah.
And kind of give them sticky names. Even like I named one thing called clamshell. Like, don't close the computer all the way because then you have to log back in again.
Right.
Can take a long time.
Sure.
Even with high school kids.
Right.
And so trying to build those kind of granular practices so that we could scale more easily and help districts to not only see what it looks like, but able to, you know, build their own a la carte menu of what they want to see in their classroom.
Right.
But I got to film in a bunch of different schools and then
Cool.
moved over to the Learning Accelerator to continue that work with Beth Abbott and built out like Innovation Directors Network. So it's a group of directors of personalized learning across the country who notoriously are on islands.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times they have these titles that are like Director of Personalized Learning and Blended Learning and Technology with.
Yeah. They're kind of like Highlanders. There can only be one within a culture. They're like the wise sage up on the hill. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's hard though is because they have so many different hats they're wearing.
Yeah.
A lot of times they have their head down in the work. How do they take it up and identify ecosystem challenges they're all facing and actually address those challenges as a collective,
Right.
as a team? And so I launched that it was around 2017.
Okay.
And some of those folks are still some of my most valued friends, thought partners in this work, and really being able to say, so this is happening in Chicago and this is happening in Highline, this is happening in Dallas.
Yeah.
Like, and how do we actually capture, codify, and share, but also scale and also offer opportunities for access points to everyone.
Right.
A lot of times it's happening in packets. So moved over to a nonprofit. And then 3 years ago, last week, from Coast into here, I was at Vivi for 3 years. So I joined as they were kind of really scaling in the US market to help really think through positioning, go-to-market strategies. How do we build and enable Vivi to be a tool that built teacher capacity and student learning and reader capacity through things like digital signage, emergency alerts, wireless screen sharing, which you can take at like a one-dimensional way, but how do you actually leverage those tools to build community connection to enable safety for your whole school in a way that's capacity filling for that person who is in charge of all of those infrastructures.
Right.
And then also giving it to teachers and allowing them to empower their students for student-driven learning experience.
Yeah.
So I was able to come on and work across all areas of business to really say, okay, so in my past life, you know, I was a tech director when it was like using the doc cam really well.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, please answer your email.
Right. Somebody's got to do it.
And so kind of using that experience of what that looks like as an educator, as a leader, and how can we really empower our district and other districts to not just use the technology, use Vivi,
Yeah.
but how to implement it in research-based ways that are going to just change the way they work.
Yeah. And we're going to want to go a little deeper into what the it is, what exactly is the experience? What are the tools? But then the other thing we're going to share as part of the conversation is you're doing research with
Yeah.
teachers, trying to get a finger on the pulse out there.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what's going on with that?
Yes. So we recently just paired up with my old nonprofit, which that shows
Yeah.
great relationships.
Still on good terms.
We worked in partnership with the Learning Accelerator to build a research study on what enabled teachers to feel successful. And the real reason you're looking at this is, again, like we were mentioning earlier, there's a teacher retention issue.
Yeah.
There is, I was saying, a lot of teachers are surviving and not thriving.
Yeah.
And how can we change that narrative?
Mhm.
And how can we give them tools and supports and structures that not only enable them to be successful, but feel safe?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had times in your life where you were successful, but you didn't feel successful. And you act very different when you don't have that like inner owning of that
Yeah.
success. And so when you feel successful, you're going to take risks.
Yeah.
You're going to innovate. You're going to be willing to try new things, be
Mhm.
willing to bring other people in, pray in the profession, keep
Yeah.
going. And so
Right.
we partnered with them to do this, and we actually got 1,750 completed surveys from teachers globally.
It's a big number. And you're global. Gee,
We were
yeah.
global. And so
Yeah.
we were in our 3 spots. So Australia, the UK, and the US was
Okay.
where those were
Yeah.
completed. We had, I think, 2,600 were started. But the
Okay.
thing was, is we stopped at a certain point if they weren't teachers. We wanted
Yeah.
classroom teachers to really get the perspective
Mhm.
of what enabled them to feel successful. And it was really cool. We were able to distill out of that research. So here's all different areas that they're saying, feeling really successful, not successful, empowered, not empowered. And we ended up bringing out this like framework, which was the 4 key drivers that enables teachers to feel successful and
Right.
how their perception of success changes with where they are in
Mhm.
that framework.
And I'm going to show my age here, but I suddenly remembered Billy Crystal. It's better to look good than to feel good. And new look, Mob Fernando. Oh my God. It's totally SNL skit suddenly came to mind because in some ways, it's almost like what you're saying is a little bit of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of like,
Do you have
And-
the confidence?
yeah. And that confidence, like if you can imbue your space with that confidence and that belief, you can actually change a culture.
Yes.
I keep talking about this interview. Horatio Sanchez does applied neuroscience for K12. And he was talking about how you can actually like measure the collective like brain chemistry of a culture. And it's, he even said things like if you model empathy and if you are kind of positive, even in how you talk and how you like intone your voice and what kind of relational skills you have, it changes the whole like brain energy that then allows kids to thrive.
100%. And I think that modeling, that tone, and that speaks to actually one of the things that wasn't a driver, but was kind of like an unlock to get there is building a sense of community and connection across the board. And that kind of speaks to it, like that collective energy.
Yeah.
Like, how are you building a culture of vulnerability? How are you enabling folks to truly connect, not as just educators, but as people? Like,
Right.
one of the quotes I remember reading was like, I like to know people, like if they have kids, their birthday, like
Right.
having that connection also allows you to not only feel successful in yourself, but feel successful as a collective,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
is a different thing too, right?
Right.
And a lot of times, I always said, I did research on like effective personalizing PD and stuff and think about adult learning and things
Yeah.
like that.
I can talk andragogy. I'm sorry. It's still early. It feels like a crime drama too, because the lights are reflecting. That's a papa shot. That's not
We're
the photo.
not getting arrested.
Oh my God.
No, but it is so interesting. I say, you're only going to get vulnerability if you show vulnerability
Yeah.
yourself. And I used to do this like pineapple analogy where it's like, what is your crown and what are you ripening?
Right.
Because no one has all crown.
Right.
Everyone's always, and sometimes the thing you're ripening becomes your crown.
Right.
And so how
It's
do you
like
build?
horizon thinking with fruit, with produce. Yeah.
You're like, okay, we're still working on this one. My
We're-
bananas.
Right.
We have bananas that are still green though. Those are
Right.
just not going.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that similarly, and it was interesting, the research there was definitely a relationship, but earlier teachers, obviously classroom management is something they're working on much more, and they feel successful if they actually have classroom management, right? But there are many new teachers who have that. And so they've moved their perception of success differently. And so those 4 drivers, it starts with classroom management. If you don't have that baseline, then you're not going to be able to move
Maslowian.
100%. Or like, you've got your Bloom's taxonomy.
Right.
And how do you build those student-teacher connection and active engagement were the ones that they were rated the highest overall, where I feel successful when I feel connected to my students and they're actively engaged.
Yeah.
There was also a deciding factor between it wasn't just engaged, it was actively engaged.
Right.
They are participating, they're owning.
Right.
That moment when you're in the classroom and there's that buzz and you kind of step back and you're like, I don't need to do anything.
Right.
And that is that beautiful moment where you come home and you're like, my cup is full. I feel amazing. And then on top of that is actually, once you've really gone there, perception changes to, I am successful if they are engaging with high quality instruction. So like you can be actively engaged into like a fun activity, but now I'm changing the barometer for what I see as success.
I think Maslow would get into this. Interestingly, I heard he got that from the Lakota, because it does feel like if you don't have those sort of base level safety needs, and then you painted the rosier side of the picture. The better side is you kind of know, and I taught mostly for Kaplan, and I was kind of like a stand-up comedian where like I was trying to make everybody entertained. And
aren't we all?
Are you not entertained? That's what I'd say in my class all the time. But there is that level of knowing when you don't have the room. Knowing that a kid is checked out, even though you're trying to reach them. And like, that is kind of
smile
like,
and nod.
Yeah, it's true. They can be checked out while sort of performative checked in.
Yes.
And then there's even kids who are just, Teach for America's Reinvention Lab's doing this thing on the new absenteeism. And they're basically saying like, you might be counted as being in class, but you're really not engaged. And I guess there's a little of a chicken and egg thing there with the high quality materials too, where like, I guess maybe they keep engagement. The kid needs to kind of be engaged through the relational stuff. And then once they're actually ready to lean in, the content they're leaning into. I guess if it's bad, maybe they're less likely to lean into the good.
Probably. Well, and so I actually was Teach for America in LA.
Yeah, nice.
And I always say I was the Teach for America success story. I did not plan on staying in teaching for more than 2 years and fell in love with it.
Yeah.
But from this framework standpoint, I had folks coming to visit to see my classroom. They're like, we've heard you're doing amazing stuff. And they were like, the instruction is great. I did not see myself as successful, even though they were engaging with high quality instruction, because I felt like I didn't have management.
Right.
Like I felt like I was in constant, like standing on eggshells, right?
Right.
And I mean, through time I did.
Right.
Through time I was able to build those relationships. I was able to, and the students were engaged, but it was just like, I felt like I was like, oh God, somebody's coming to my classroom. Please guys, just be good.
Right.
And then, but meanwhile, they came in and their perception of me was very different than my perception of me. And I'm sure you could unpack that in many ways.
Yeah.
I'm very much a perfectionist. I want everything to be rolling strong and things like that. But my perception changed. And I think that was a lot, thinking through here, ready. And we'll give you a link so you can download the whole report.
Okay.
And get all of the information. But it is interesting. And so what we did a lot of work was like, so what does this look like? How do we build out key takeaways for leaders so that they feel like they can take a step and say, actually, I feel like X is going really well with this area of teachers. Y is going really well over here. Let's have a conversation about it, because again, that vulnerability and communicate and be like, this is what is going to help you feel successful. How can we support you in that? And then, I mean, obviously with like the Vivi side, we do digital signage, for instance, which like you say digital signage and people are like, okay, digital signage could be like a sign at the front office, right? But we have some districts that have used it to build community and connection. So they like, one district in Jason Bayer in Denver, they have dad jokes during passing period. Just as like a fun or like QR code you can scan and answer a different quiz. So like building those touch points. Also celebrating teachers. We have people who are like having, celebrate this teacher or this student. we have districts that if you have a Vivi in every single classroom, they actually, Elkhorn, they turn on every single screen in the morning and they can live broadcast. They have
Oh,
2 fifth graders who do it
wow.
each week and they don't need any setup. They just sit there with their computer and they say like the morning announcement. They tell everybody's
Wow.
birthday. How
Yeah.
fun would that be to get your birthday? They
And
do the
plus,
menu.
some of these kids are learning like AV, streaming, media,
100%.
Twitch skills.
They do it every morning with 2 minutes. So they're setting off their day with 2 minutes of joy,
Yeah.
of connection, of celebration by using a technology they already have in their classroom to allow teachers to wirelessly share their screen, students to wirelessly share their screen.
Yeah.
But now we have El Segundo does morning announcements. We have Carmel Clay is going to be starting it up. We have a ton of districts who do the morning announcements live stream now. Sometimes the principal will read a book on a Friday to the whole school, or they'll do a game that not everyone can fit in. They have a game streaming. Well, like, how are we leveraging what we already have in the classroom to 2 minutes is so little from instructional time.
Right.
That can totally change the trajectory
Yeah.
of connection for students and teachers. Imagine like as a teacher, I mean, sometimes your birthday is either like the coolest day ever because your kids just like remember and have some, or you're like, I'm at school
Yeah.
and this is rough.
What have I done with my life?
And imagine them coming on 2 little fifth graders or high school,
Yeah.
like, hey, and also a happy
Totally.
birthday.
Yeah.
They do the pledge, they do the whole thing. And I think that having those, it becomes the connective tissue.
Yep.
And I think that so many times we take technology and we're like, it does this one thing, but what else can it do?
Right.
And how can we build these skills with our students? I mean, imagine presenting to the whole school. And
Yeah.
it's not scary because you're sitting in a room with just a laptop with one friend reading a script, but you are building those skills and that confidence with
Sir Anderson Cooper, a future Kelly Ripa.
They come on and they're like, hello. There's a few that definitely come on and are like ready to.
They're probably future influencers of whom I don't even know the current influencers.
I was going to say they're going to have the next podcast.
Exactly. The future podcasters. That's what
they're ready.
So looking ahead, we haven't talked about AI. You're sort of staying on top of the emerging technology. Vivi is a technology company.
Yeah.
What's coming? Because we're here at this conference. There's there's actually 3 parts of this conference. There's
so many.
My son, when there's like a number with like 737 is a 3 sandwich because there's 2 sevens on either side of this conference. It's a neurology sandwich. It's 2 education conferences on either side of a huge neurology brain conference, brain doctors in the middle. Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, that's insider tip. We should be live streaming this. I'll probably have to cut it.
I mean,
some of this is the A material. I don't know.
I think it's just all A material.
But looking ahead, so we're mixing it up with neurologists and AI founders and, folks who think about big ideas, thought leaders. Where do you see this stuff heading in a few years? Say by 2030 and beyond, where's this going to head?
So the AI component, you have to ask my product team. There's a lot of there's a lot of product.
Your product team is still humans, right?
They're still human as of today.
Go human product people.
One thing that I'm excited, and this is in the short term. In the short term, we're actually adding a new offering. So most of the stuff on our product board is brought in by customers. So I run our Vivi Educator Council, which is a global group of Vivi users that meet quarterly from across the globe. The first half is just sharing best practices with each other. Like, hey, I did this. Did you do this? How did you do this? Let's learn. And
community of practice.
Yeah, they've become friends.
Yeah.
Like we text with each other. We're seeing each other at different conferences. And I think
it's a real thing.
I think the thing is too, is we have so many similar products in our school districts. So like, how do we not only connect, but then one of my jobs is really to elevate their voice. They're doing the work. I want to hear from them what's happening and how you can do it.
That's cool.
And so they give us that. So one of the things they've been asking for, which is coming out, is stream to student. So for diverse learners, so I'm sharing to the screen. You can actually have certain students you can directly share to their screens so that if they're one-on-one with a teacher's assistant.
And since it's like Minority Report, right? Like
you can be all of, but that I think is going to be really powerful for students too. And then also thinking through the CTE things, stuff like that. Also, I will say
career and technical education. Because the work
from
that
accessibility, you're using your hands, and how do you share that with everyone if it's in the front of the room?
Right.
And how do you make sure that we're building those connective tissue, those dotted lines to help every student have access to that learning experience so that they can also, one, learn, and two, share themselves.
And they're kind of like, it's like TV screens basically. And what exactly is, yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
The little blue box.
Yeah.
My daughter calls it a little robot because like it has two antennas.
Yeah.
You attach it to any screen, projector, interactive flat panel, and it allows teachers to wirelessly share, and actually up to 4 kids can share at the same time.
Yep.
It also then has HDMI-C, so it can be powered on by Vivi Central. So if there's an emergency, it will power on every single one and have a visual of what's happening. It also can do, and then there's for our IT folk, they can actually see a heartbeat of every single one every day, every 2 minutes. And if it goes offline, they can remotely see it. Because you know that moment when you walk in, it's not working.
Totally.
And it also has a ton of instructional tools for students around and teachers. So teachers can play their content straight through it. They can multitask. It's made just for education. So when a student asks to share, you can preview it. So there's no like crazy just taking over the screen situation.
I'll never forget. I think it was New Year's 2015. Me and my future wife were in Austin. That's when we first discovered you could share from your phone to the TV.
Oh, yeah.
And like now I just take that for granted, but it's interesting to think about those use cases brought into a classroom. So a whole next level of thinking. And we're getting close to time.
Yeah. Okay. And so other future stuff. I think the biggest thing is because Vivi has all these possibilities.
Yeah.
I think the way classrooms are going to look in 2030 is a lot more student driven, a lot more flexible working spaces, a lot more students building, designing, things like
breakouts.
Yeah. And so what's nice about Vivi is it is actually future proofed in that way. So like you may get it for wireless screen sharing right now.
Yep.
But we have districts that have carts that have, it's called ditch the desk. They don't have a desk anymore because they don't ever have to be at the front of the room, and then also, we work with Forney ISD. I presented at a keynote at FETC. They have like a fully working mall where there's students and there's a classroom behind each storefront. Stores pay rent based on how many students they serve. And students are learning skills about like projecting how many flowers they have to order, like a flower shop, a mechanic, a hair salon, a store, and everything is using Vivi, and the fact that it's just one thing that's allowing take over the TVs, to take over the screens, to take over. So we're really trying to focus on how can we continue to build our product in a way that allows for this flexible learning and allows for you don't have to get something new because you changed your model. So I think as we go toward 2030, we're going to have a lot of thinking about like, what is best for teachers? What is best for kids? And if we have a product that can support you across that spectrum and help you and be that like, help you usher towards that type of model without saying, okay, now we're here.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't work. We need something else.
Right.
That's kind of what we're really trying to think through with like, how are we forward thinking? It's like, how do we support the now and the future?
Yeah. Amazing stuff here with Juliana Finegan from Vivi. It reminds me, I was at a deep tech conference talking about quantum computing.
Oh, wow.
And Q-Day. We'll be talking more about Q-Day because that's when the quantum chips can break our current, they become so powerful, they can like break our current encryption models. Really interesting stuff.
Nerve-wracking.
It is a little nerve-wracking, but the way you were talking about being sort of flexible in terms of flipping from one model to another, it's almost platform thinking and trying to like build a resistant future by thinking about how things could go and being flexible.
Well, and I think that that's the hardest thing, right? It's like if you buy something for the now, and then you're like, look, we did all of this other great stuff, but now we have to like redo our whole tech stack.
Yeah.
That, I mean,
you're always fighting, you're fighting yesterday's battle. It's yesterday's problem.
100%. And you can't just do it for now because now is so small and it shouldn't be. I mean, with innovation and iteration the way it is right now and allowing teachers, like we speak back to this, it's like empowering them to try new things. They need the structures and support to do.
Yeah. And they need to feel safe to maybe get some things wrong, the vulnerability
you
were
need to
talking
fail
about.
forward, throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, and then keep working toward that.
Amazing stuff. And it's early and I'm already ready for my pasta dish. Thank you, everyone. This is Trending in Education.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.